Okay, let's jump into calm transformations. And I do have a PowerPoint I'm just going to buzz through quickly. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how that whole idea was born. So, I'm a change management professional. This is what I've done in my corporate job. This is what I do in my consulting gig. And there's all kinds of frameworks on how you can move yourself and other people through change. And most of them are really geared towards kind of that corporate environment, which is great. If you're in corporate and you're managing a big change, as I looked at it, I thought, gosh, I really want something that's more personal, that's going to help people who are managing themselves and they're not really, so focused on that corporate ideal. And then also a framework that works for people if you are in that space. And so I took a look at everything that was out there and I'm like, I'm just not seeing what I want. And what I really wanted was something that would be kind of that I can move through this at a pace that doesn't feel scary or hectic or overwhelming. And so that's how I came up with the Calm Transformation model. And I've used it. I absolutely love it. I'll walk you through it on this call. What you have inside of your bundle is you've got your bundle checklist. There's a calm assessment, and I'm going to talk you through that. You don't have to print it or have it open. I'll have you take the assessment or really briefly during part of the call. We'll kind of talk through what that means. And then I also gave you guys a Calm Transformation 5 steps that just walks through it
That's the one I have.
generally. Yeah. So that's perfect. And then some journaling prompts if you choose to do that. But what I thought I would do is just pull up the PowerPoint. I'll keep us on the window so that we can see each other, and I'll just walk you through. And this is a PowerPoint that I've used for organizations and individuals. And the thing that I like about this framework is we can also translate it to that transformation that we're going to have for the people in our business. So you think about your students, what is it they need to understand, or the parents, to be comfortable to sign up for the program? And that's going to happen in clarity and alignment. And so we'll kind of talk through that as we go through. I'm going to pull up my screen and I'll blow this up. Let me get back to the beginning. So this is the part of a PowerPoint presentation that I use when I'm working with organizations to talk about calm transformation. I just like people to understand that we're just juggling so much in our lives, right? So we've got, work, we've got family, we're trying to take care of our health care. And then when these changes come, or even when we want to change in our life, say someone's, a student and they're like in the middle of that and they're looking to say, gosh, I need this support. It feels overwhelming to even ask for help sometimes, right? And
Right.
so it's like we wish it was different, we want it to be different, and yet we don't take that step, because even engaging with somebody just feels like, okay, that's just adding one more thing to my plate. And so as I thought about that, I thought there's got to be a way that we can not only move through transformation ourselves, and that's, I use this all the time with my clients, both my one-on-one and my corporate clients, but also move ourselves through change and give us a language that we can talk to people so that they do feel calm, like they know that this is the right product or service for them, or they know it's not. I'm a big fan of that. If I talk to you about what I'm going to offer and you're like, yeah, that's not exactly what I'm looking for, great, then go find what that fit is, because what I really want is for you to make that transformation, right? So we'll walk through what the different phases mean, but this is what they stand for. So it's the L is squared because we've got two different pieces. So it's really getting clarity, getting alignment, and then the learning. So there's two parts to the learning. There's the skill and there's the mastery. I don't know about you, Stephanie, but for me, like, I can learn something in a book and get it, but until I get my hands on it, or I get, using it, I don't have mastery.
That's
I
right.
can't. Are you like that too?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm like that. I can read it all day, but until I go to do it, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's where I get frustrated with some of these models on transformation, is it's like, oh, well, I'm going to serve up all the how-tos for you. And it's like, that's great. But now I'm like, I'm short of breath, because if you give me all of that, I haven't done it. I don't know. I'm not going to be great at it until I roll up my sleeves and try it.
Hmm. Definitely.
So, so I like to break it down there. And it's really about mindset, right? It's like making sure I don't slip back to the old way of doing things, knowing that I can do this, putting in just kind of those guideposts that are going to kind of keep me going in the right direction. So that is the full transformation model. So I
And
thought what
also
I'd do,
knowing that you're going to be, oh, sorry, the
oh, go
mindset
ahead.
thing, also knowing that's going to be like uncomfortable, right? When you're about to
Yes.
transform into something, your mindset,
Yeah,
like kind of set it up for it's going to be uncomfortable.
totally. And that's a good thing because you're growing, you're stretching, you're learning, and but we battle against it, don't we? Like it's
Yep.
just hard. It's hard.
Who
I
wants
do
to
it
be
all the time.
uncomfortable?
Yeah, which is like my post on the whole, using the clay. It's like I just wanted to go have fun. I didn't have any expectations at all. And
Right.
so it actually made it easier because I wasn't putting that pressure on me, you know. So I'll walk you through kind of the different pieces. So when we think about clarity, that's all around understanding exactly what's going to change. So when you work with me, what does that transformation look like? What are we going to be working on? Why is now the time to do that? And then what's going to stay the same? That's one of my favorite things because it gives you kind of that Linus of security blanket where you can say, okay, I know that we're going to be working on all these things, but this is going to just stay the same, and I can kind of latch on to that piece. So when we think about clarity, it really is answering the questions for ourselves and for the people that we're working with. Exactly what is going to change when we work together? you know um, why is this important that I make this change, and what's going to stay the same? Getting really, really clear on what we're going to do together. And I think that's really helpful in our messaging when we think about what we're putting out there in terms of content, because the thing that creates a lot of that angst or looks like resistance or stops people from working with us is they just don't understand. They're just not clear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's something I'm working on for my business too, because I do big picture. I'm like, you know what
Yes.
it's like to have a college coach. And like, no, Stephanie, bring it in, get clear, get clear. So that's definitely something I can use for my business too.
Totally. So, really getting into those details. What does it look like? What are we going to do together? How are you going to feel? How am I
Right.
going to support you? Like really getting clear, because otherwise they just don't understand. They've not done it. And so to take
Hmm.
that leap, it feels risky, right? And then making sure that you keep, what's going to stay the same. And what's really interesting about that is it doesn't even have to be connected directly to the transformation. So what I mean by that is, like, we'll take your university coaching, for example. One of the things you may say is, you know what? Your curriculum's not going to change. The classes that you're
Right.
taking, those classes stay the same. Your schedule, that's not going to change. We're going to work together around that, because otherwise I feel like, you know, this is too much. I can't do that. So it's really, really digging into that clarity model. And then alignment is all around understanding what the benefits are to working with you. So this is between when we get people through clarity and alignment, they're no longer resisting. So when we think about managing resistance or resistance to signing up for your program, they get really clear on what you're going to do. And then alignment, they understand the benefits. So you spell that out specifically. What is it going to give me? What are the benefits
Right.
to me? So like for your program, I think, it's and a lot of the service programs are, it's going to save you so much time. Like you think it's going to take time, it's not. It is going to save you time because you're going to get really, really clear on exactly what you need to do and the things that you can stop doing. We're going to uncover what those are. And so, and it's going to help you be successful in school. You're not going
Right.
to have that situation where maybe you're not passing a class or you're not clear on what the expectations are, because you and I are going to work together to uncover that. And I'm going to help you ask the right questions. So this alignment part is really all about benefits. What are the benefits to the person who's going to be going through your product or service or your program? And when you think of it from that perspective, again, you can start crafting those messages in your content and your one-on-one conversations. Because as soon as someone makes a decision to engage, and if you're in a corporate setting, it's engaging in the change, When we're talking about, an entrepreneurial business, it's deciding to engage in your product or your service or your program. They are through resistance. They're settled. They're really clear on what it is they're going to get in the program. They completely understand the benefits, and they're like, I've made a decision to give this a go. And the funny thing about getting through those two phases, that alignment, is they don't even have to be super excited about it. I mean, we want them to, especially when it's our
Yeah.
programs. We want them to be like, oh, this is so great, I can't wait. Truly, all it means is they have to make a decision to try, to show up, to work with us, and to do the work. And they are through that resistance piece, and they're ready to jump on to the next phase, is what you're learning. So I'm going to kind of take a pause there and see, how does that resonate with you? What questions do you have about that?
So no, I think it's really important to get the alignment down. Recently, there was a family member in town, and they really challenged me. So they found out what I was doing through someone else, and they came after me hard. And I was sitting at the table, and I was so proud of myself because I just kept calm and just answered them. And I did fairly well. Like, if I were to grade myself, I would say like 75, 80. But if I got more clear about the alignment part, I would have been able to take it to the 100 level.
Yep.
And I was almost giddy that somebody had came after me, because no one's came after me before. And I was really excited about that, because I was like, this is how it's going to feel. So are you secure enough to not defend it, but to explain it to someone and be
Yep.
okay if they don't understand it? So I love that we're talking about the alignment part and the clarity part, because I think that'll help in the confidence thing when you're presenting your program.
Totally. And what I would do, while it's fresh in your mind, I would go and I would journal about the things that they asked you, because their questions are going to be the exact same questions that other people have about your program.
Yes.
So you could use that in your FAQs. And if they came at you kind of harshly, of course, you could change that a little bit. But even like in your posts. So like, give me an example of one of the questions that someone kind of came at you with.
Sure. He said, they're going to college, they're studying, like, what's the problem here? What could they possibly stress out about? It's the best time of their life. And so I had to explain, like, well, there's other stresses. It's not just about studying, right? It's about friendship. It's about financial hardship. It's about dealing with a family who might not believe that you should be going to college. You should just get a job. And so there's a lot of aspects there. And then he said, what else did he say? Well, don't they have people that do that at the college? Which I was prepared for that one, because that's what I think in my head, right? That's what I think. And I said, well, they do have people at the college. It's just that they don't have enough time to do it in. So you're seeing 300 to 400 kids. You are trying to whip them in and out. It's a 15-minute appointment. We'll see you later. And it says, well, where I can sit with them for an hour every 2 weeks and really work it out with them. And he never fully got it, but that was okay. It was just nice to be challenged.
Yeah, no, I love that. And if you think about it, you could use those questions for your content.
Yes.
Right. You could really answer those questions in your marketing material, in if you're on a podcast, you can answer those questions in a podcast. So
legitimate questions, right? They weren't so out there. They were legitimate questions about it. So I was very happy.
I know, it's exciting. Like, I'm the same way. It's funny. It seems like, it's hard. I hear my dogs barking. It feels like, they're attacking this thing that I have all this passion about, and they're interested, or they wouldn't be asking the questions. And it's like that great preview for you to see what the questions that other people are going to have for you.
Yes. And
so
I was
I think
in a
it's
safe
perfect.
space when it happened. So I think that helps too, right? So I was at a family member,
Totally.
My parents' house. He's coming at me. He's a cousin. He's coming at me. And so it was like, okay, so now get ready, because when you're in the middle of a presentation and someone starts doing that to you, you'll have some practice kind of going at it a little bit, not at it, but explaining yourself in a professional manner.
Of course, because it's going to happen, right?
Yes.
That's going to happen. So the cool thing is once you get people through that clarity and alignment, and they've made a decision to engage, now you can start working on the two learning aspects. And there really are two. We talked about that a little bit ago. So there's the learning the skills, which is the very first phase. And that, is really specific technical training. And it can be behavioral training, right? Like, if we're asking people to approach things in a completely different way, it can totally be that. It might be, new mindset. We talked about that too, approaching things differently. It can be, technical, it can be organizational. How do you plan for all of the things that you've got coming up in your calendar? But this first part is really that teaching or that training part. And then you move into mastery. So that's where you're proficient. And this is what the way that I like to divide it up. You've got learning the skills over here, and then you've got getting proficient over here. Getting proficient takes time. It takes practice. I have to roll up my sleeves and do the thing that you've taught me to do in order to like really have this and make this part of my DNA. And I imagine, like I think about your students, they're frustrated, they're, concerned, they come to you, you give them some skills. Well, now they need a couple of weeks to go do that and see how that feels and learn what works for them, right?
That's the hardest part, right? Not only for me, but for them too. I remember dealing with a student and I gave him the skills, he just wouldn't do it. And I took it so personal. And thank God I had a good supervisor. And he's like, it really has nothing to do with you at that point. Like once you give the skills, they have to go do, it has nothing to do with you. So the hardest part is the action part.
Well, and I think that's very true, because in order for them to get that transformation, they have to do the work. I mean, you're there to coach and guide. They're the ones they're going to be doing that work. And that's where they learn that mastery. And then if you think about mindset, I love this slide for this. It's about how do you make it stick? Because it's so easy to do something different for a short period of time and then go back to the way that we do things. So creating that support system that's going to continue that change as a part of your life. Sometimes it means hiring somebody like you to like stay with me through my college years to really help me make this part of this is just the way that I operate. Sometimes it's measurements. We give ourselves in our businesses or in corporate, we have a measurement that we have to hit. Sometimes it's systems. You take the old system out and you put the new system in and you monitor to make sure that those new systems are used. So really getting that new mindset so that you can get those new results. I'm a big fan of visualization. I've shared that with, my Rice sisters before, of really being intentional about visualization and getting a clear picture of what I want my transformation to look like so that I do sustain the results. And so it's all about cultivating that, and us as we're going, through our own personal transformations, deciding for ourselves, what is it I'm going to do that's really going to get me in the mindset to sustain this once I get it implemented. And then the people that we're working with, it's the same thing, asking them, talk to me about how you're going to adjust your mindset. What things are you going to do, whether it's measurement, whether it's visualization, whether it's, putting a tick mark on the calendar every week. You tell me what you can do that's going to help you sustain. So this is all around that reinforcement or that sustaining the change that we're implementing on the back end. So before I go on, I'll just ask quickly, how is this feeling, or what questions do you have about the CALM framework?
So for me, just personally, it's hard, like all our brains work so differently. So
yes,
it's difficult because for me, it's like, yes, when we talk about mindset and results for business or personal, it's like, yep, I know what I want to do, right? I've started business, but how do you actually want that to look, right? And so to think about that is a different mindset for me, because I'm like, oh no, like this is what I want to do. I want to coach students. Yeah, but how is that going to look, Stephanie? How is that going to look day in and day out? Or how do you want it to look? And so I like that this presentation is getting me thinking in a different way about my mindset. A lot of minds in there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I think the other thing that's really helpful is, is doing that visualization. So not having those expectations, sitting down and visualizing what is it going to look like, because then all of the actions that you take are going to help lead you in that direction. And I'll walk you through, we're going to do an assessment here next, and I'm going to actually pull up the assessment for you. Okay. And what's interesting about this is you can do the assessment on yourself, or you can do the assessment with someone on your team at your corporate work, or someone that you're working with, Okay. I'll tell you a little story, and then I'll pull up the assessment that will kind of help bring this home. So The story that I like to tell is about my daughter. And I used to use this story as kind of a transformation story when I worked at Avnet. And she came as an intern there a couple of years later. And she was like, Mom, this lady was talking about, her transformation story. Do you have one? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, what's it about? And I'm like, well, actually, it's about you. And she's like, oh my God, tell me the story. So I did. And then she was like, how many people have heard that story? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. And she's like, give it a ballpark. And I'm like, it's thousands. She was horrified. And so then when I would have my change management workshop, she'd come in and she'd say, hi, I'm the one that was terrible when I was a teenager. I'm like, you weren't terrible. You were just a teenager. So I'll tell you the story. And this is what I mean. This calm framework will work in any part of your life. It works in personal, it works in business, it works when you're an entrepreneur. Anytime that you're going through a change yourself, or you're thinking, I want somebody to do something differently, and I don't quite know how to get them there, right? So my story about Jill is this. She was 16, and I had gone through a horrible, messy divorce. Started dating my current husband. We'd gotten married after dating for a year. We'd been living together for about 6 months, and Jill she was 16, and she pretty much kind of quit talking to me almost completely, like where I'd walk in the room and I'd try to talk to this kid and like nothing would happen. And I was super, super frustrated, and I really didn't know what to do. I felt like I'd done everything that I could do. And I was talking to my husband about it one day, and he was like, you know what you need to do? You need to take her to dinner. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Like, I just told you my kid's not talking to me. I didn't say we had like a nutrition dilemma. I said, I can't get this kid to talk to me. And he's like, no, invite her out to dinner. So I did. And she said no. And I felt very like, so I go back to Jeff and I'm like, so Mr. Smarty Pants, I invited Jill to dinner and she said no. And he's like, okay, well, where did you offer to take her to dinner? And I said, I don't know why that matters at all. And he goes, I'll tell you why it matters. Because Jill likes going to nice dinners with silverware on the table and a linen napkin on her lap. Go back and invite her to a nice dinner. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So I went back and I invited her to a nice dinner, and she goes, I'm not kidding you. Okay, but I'm only going to talk about what I want to talk about. I said, okay, deal. So we went to dinner, and it went okay. And I said to her at the end of dinner, I'm like, hey, do you think you would go to dinner with me next week? She goes, I don't know, maybe I might go to dinner with you. So you fast forward like 4 months, and every Friday, the same kid would run in the house and she would say, Mom, where are we going to dinner this weekend? So I'm going to walk you through the calm framework in a second, but let me ask you, did I get what I wanted?
Yes.
Yeah, I totally did. She started talking to me. We went to dinner. Our relationship was so much better. I'm going to walk you through the calm framework. So I think about clarity, and remember the clarity questions are, what's changing, right? What did I want her to change? Why did I want her to change? And what was the risk of not changing? She knew that. I had told her I wanted her to talk to me, right? I wanted her to communicate with me. I tried to do it in a couple of ways before I invited her to dinner that didn't work so well. So one of the things that I did was I told her that I was going to take the car keys from her if she didn't start talking to me. That kind of reward punishment. As you might imagine, that did not work at freaking all.
Yeah, no.
At one point, I decided I was in charge because I was the mom, and I was going to lay down the law. And I'm just going to tell you right now that you're going to start talking to me, and it's going to start right now. So start talking. And that did not work at all. So, I was like at my total wit's end. So you think about the clarity questions. Did she know what I wanted her to do differently? Yeah. She was completely clear on that. Did she understand what was at risk if she didn't do it? Yep, I laid it out in no uncertain terms, but yet still she was resisting. Now we move on to the alignment questions, and this is where Jill was stuck. She hadn't made a decision to engage, right?
Mhm.
If you think about the learning pieces, I'll go there first and we'll come back to alignment. I was in a unique position because I was her mother and I had taught her how to talk. So I knew she had the skills,
Yes,
right?
that's true.
I knew that she could physically speak to me, and she had mastery
Right.
because she talked to everybody else. She
Right.
texted people, she talked to people on the phone, and she had great body language because she rolled her eyes when I asked her if she wanted to go to dinner. So mastery was not the problem.
Right.
When you think about the alignment questions, what were the benefits to Jill? What were the benefits to her to engage in the transformation I wanted her to undertake? So I'll ask you, what was the benefit that was big enough that she finally said, yes, I am going to make a decision to engage in that thing that you want me to do? So what was it, Stephanie?
I think it was a few things. I think it was the restaurant, but I kind of think it was because she wanted to spend time with you, like alone. I think it was two things. Yeah.
It could be. Yeah. Subconsciously, she probably did. It was kind of hard to tease that out because
Yeah.
she
At
was so
16, she's not going to
resistant.
admit it, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting because it was that restaurant that night, that dinner, but not just any dinner. Because remember, she said no to me the first time. But when I upped the ante a little bit and she got a nice dinner at a nice restaurant, that was enough to get her through alignment. She was aligned to
Yeah.
go with me because she was going to get what she wanted on the back end of that. And in terms of mindset and reinforcement, I didn't have anything to reinforce yet. Now later, as I shared, she would come in and I'd say, yeah, where do you want to go this weekend, right? So what we have to do is we have to take people through that calm journey, and we can't skip around. Like, I couldn't teach her, I'd already taught her how to talk. She didn't need that. I couldn't focus on the mindset. So you have to get through them in phases. It is really a stepping stone. So you start with whether you're getting yourself through your own resistance or transformation you want to make, getting really, really clear on exactly what's going to change, why it's important, and what's at risk if you don't. Going to alignment, understanding the benefits, and making a decision to engage, learning the skills in the first learning of the framework, getting to mastery by practicing, and then getting that mindset where you sustain the change. You have to actually go through that in order. Another good example is which has changed for me over time, is my self-care journey. So the reason why I started doing foam rolling with Stacy is because I wanted core strength so that as I age, I'm going to be able to do all the things I want to do. And I'm really clear on what I want to do. I want to get more core strength. Why do I want to do it? Because I want to be active as I age. And what's at risk if I don't? I look at my mom. She's a fall risk. There's so many things that she can't do. I don't want that to be my reality. And so that is a very, very strong driver in my desire, that alignment phase where I have chosen to engage in that. It's a big enough benefit that I'm like, yeah, I need to do that. Like, this is important for me. I understand the risks if I don't. But you can't jump to the risks or that alignment if you haven't gotten people already through that, clarity piece where they understand what is it you're even asking me to do? I don't understand. So I want you to think for a minute, and I won't ask you unless you want to share, and remember this is being recorded, what it is you want to do the assessment on. But I want you to think of a situation. It can be for you personally, where you're really trying to change something in your life, or it can be where you're facilitating a change with another person, right? So if you don't mind just telling me which one you're going to choose.
I'm going to do like the client one, like if I'm working with a client.
So we're going to pull up the assessment. And what I want you to do is I want you to rate that client. So do you have a specific person in mind?
No.
Okay. You can use, if you want, you can use that person we talked about a minute ago, the one that was really struggling.
And that wouldn't take my advice.
Yep, exactly.
Yes.
That person. So this will help you kind of think about what that transformation could have looked like, right?
Yes.
So I want you to just grab a piece of paper out and I want you to rate them on a scale of him. Is it a him or a her?
It's a him. Yep.
Okay. I want you to rate him on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest. He had absolutely no idea, and 5 being, yep, he totally knew exactly what you wanted to be different. So I want you to think about clarity. Did he know exactly what you wanted him to change? Was he connected to why it was important to him, right? Did he understand those negative outcomes if it wasn't successful? And did he have that, compelling reason why now is the time to make that change? So you don't have to tell me the answer. We're going to go through these one at a time, and then I'm going to walk you through what I call the transformation barrier. So did you write down like a scale of 1 to 5?
Yeah, hold on one second. 4, 5.
Yep.
Really quick. Okay. I decided to avoid negative outcomes of this change is not successful. Psh, he was not dedicated.
So give him a score of 1 to 5.
Okay,
5 being he was totally there, 1 being not there at all.
Okay.
And then on the alignment side, had he made the decision to make the transformation a reality?
No.
Right? Had he decided he was going to engage with deliberate action? Did he understand the benefits? So give him a score of 1 to 5 there. And then learning and skills, right? So if you leave the other one aside, think about just skills. Did he need training? That's really what that means. He may have already had the skills, he may not have, but if you give him a score of 1 to 5 on did he really understand how to? We know that he didn't do it, but did he understand how? And did he have all of the training, knowledge, and information he needed to make it a reality? Scale of 1 to 5. And then mastery. This is all about being proficient. Had he mastered the skills? He knew how to reach out if he had questions. He knew where his tools were if he needed a refresh. And he had a plan on how he would encourage others on that same path if they were in the same position that he was in. Like he really understood how to make this happen. And then lastly, his mindset. So the things that I have down for mindsets are just example, right? Like, so their routine includes making this transformation a reality. I have down that it includes reflection and mindfulness, perhaps some meditation and journaling, that he's got a support system around him to make sure that this continues. This is that sustaining part, and that he had a measurement system to make sure that he doesn't slip back to the old ways of doing things. Okay. So that's the assessment piece. What's interesting for me about that is this. When you really look at that assessment, so this is the part I didn't tell you before we started going through it, wherever that person scores a 4 or a 5, you have to stay in that element of the calm journey until they get to a 4 or a 5. Wherever they scored a 1, 2, or 3, it's the very first place. It's their transformation barrier. They literally can't go any farther until that score gets up to a 4 or 5. So if we think about clarity, what did you score that person at?
Like in total?
Nope, just just like an overall score.
So I did every single one. I'm sorry. I thought
it's okay.
There was like 4 things.
Yep.
So clarity, he was probably at like a 2 or 3. It was a little confusing because he didn't feel like he needed to be there.
Yep.
He was failing school, and he was just like, I don't need you. Like, what do I need you for? I know what I'm doing. And of course I didn't say it, but I'm like, well, if you did, you wouldn't be seeing me, but we'll leave it. Of course I didn't say that, but
yeah,
he didn't know.
Exactly. So clarity, understanding what you wanted him to do, why it was important, and what was risk if he didn't change. Your overall score would have been a 2 or a 3. You would have needed to continue to work with him just right there before you move on to the benefits, before you move on to the training, and before you move on to the mastery, because until he completely understands and gets exactly what it is that needs to be different, you literally can't move him anywhere, because he's just going to hear Charlie Brown teacher voice. Mm-hmm. He's not going to listen. He's not going to be able to hear the next phase, which is alignment or those benefits. Now you can actually have an area where he's a 4 or a 5 farther down, but you still have to stick at that level of that journey until they get there, because until they do, they're not going to make any kind of a transformational change,
Right.
right? So we know that for him, you would have had to really stay with him on that clarity side and make sure that he really understands what you want him to do different, why it's important, and what's at risk if he doesn't, right? He's got to really internalize that. So what was your alignment score for him total? If you
2.
were to get a 2? Yep. So he never made a decision to engage.
No, he avoided me sometimes.
Yep. So if he doesn't make a decision to engage, he's not going to get that transformation. Just not going to happen, right? So you start with clarity, you move to alignment, and a little thing that's a little bit of a, I think an interesting thing is a lot of times, and I do this myself, I don't ask people to engage. I did in corporate, but I don't in my own business because I don't want to be pushy, right? But sometimes we have to do the ask and say, I need you to engage so that you can get the benefits of this program. Are you willing to commit to engage and do the things you need to do that are going to get you the better grades, get your parents off of your back, whatever those things are? And if they say no, it's kind of, well, okay, then we need to end our engagement together. And if you want to continue to work with me, I need you to make a decision to engage in this program, right? Now, in terms of the skills, what would you rate him overall in the skills?
Say a 3 or 4, like somewhere in there.
So he was pretty close to actually having the actual skills he needed to execute, right? Which was the same
you can't
thing
get
for
into that
Jill.
college without it. It was a private college. You can't get in without having the skills. You can't. Yeah.
So he probably had the skills. He may have even had the mastery, like he could perform. He just simply had not made the decision to engage.
Correct.
Right? And then the mindset where they really take the training that you are giving them and the work you're doing with them to transform the way that they are approaching their school life. That's really that mastery part. And that's where the complete transformation happens. So what this framework will do is it'll give you the language, the questions to ask, the guidance to give them to get them through that journey so that you can break through those different transformation barrier points. And it can be different for everybody. You may work with Sally, next month, and she's totally clear, right? She's totally aligned, like she gets the benefit. She's made a decision to engage. She doesn't have the skills.
Right.
And
I
now,
did have a student like that. It's so interesting you say that, because I was dealing with 4 students at one time.
Yeah.
And he was so nice and so engaged, and there was no skill there.
Exactly. But what this framework is going to do for you is it's going to tell you where you need to meet people in your program differently,
right?
Because obviously the ultimate goal is for them to experience a transformation, for them to have a successful college life, for their parents to say, oh my gosh, like this was the best thing I did to help my kid get through school. And when you have this framework in place, you can walk through that in a way that helps you diagnose the individual customized support you need to give each person to lead them through that transformation. The other thing that does is it gives you the language to sell your program, because you're going to hear what the students say. So like I said, take notes on what your relatives said to you, because those are the same questions other people are going to have. And I would say take notes on what your students say to you too, because other students are going to be feeling the same thing, and it gives you the language you need that's going to help address them, right, where they're at. So that's how that assessment works and how the CALM framework comes together. And you can use it for yourself personally. You can use it with your students. You can use it in a larger setting. One of the things that I'll do from a corporate position is, when a new change is rolled out, and now I'm on the other end of it because I'm managing the mergers and acquisitions, but I would do this when I was the recipient of the change that was coming. And I would ask the questions in clarity, because here's what they do. They set me up not to look like I'm resisting the change. They set me up to be that thought leader and that person that's here to support the change. And I'll show you the difference. So if I were to ask my supervisor the clarity questions that are in your guide, it would sound something like this. Can you help me understand exactly what's going to change when XYZ rolls out? I'd love to understand what the risk would be if we were to stay exactly as we are today, so I can understand the background for the change. And can you help me understand what's going to stay the same so I can prepare myself for what's going to come? That's way more positive than, well, I don't understand why we're doing this.
Right.
Right. And so it really works on two sides. It gives you the language you can use to move yourself through the change in a positive way that sets you up to be an influencer. And it gives you the framework and the language that you can use when you're guiding the people who are using your products and services through their change transformation journey. You can diagnose where their transformation barrier point is so you know where you need to focus. And then it also helps with that language around, okay, I need to market this program. I got to get really clear on exactly what it is I'm going to change so that people who need this program are going to be attracted to me. So that's really the three ways that you can attack this framework and use it as a benefit to you personally and to the products and services that you're delivering. So I'm going to kind of pause there and say, does that connect? How does that feel? And then what questions do you have?
No, it feels really good. Just even talking about that student, like if I would have known that when I was working with him, I would have just spent the semester trying to get him to see like something was off, right? Because you're right,
Yes.
the whole semester was wasted because I was trying to rush the steps. Like you do this, I was trying to rush it through. If I would have known just to focus on getting him to maybe realize there was a problem, right? So in his mind, there was no problem. He was going to stay in school, even though all the facts showed this was not going to happen, right?
Yes.
And so if I had just spent the semester trying to work with him to see that the result was going to end in him being kicked out of school, instead of trying to counsel him into making change, right? He wasn't ready to make the change. And so I think looking at that now, because I couldn't figure out, like, I don't understand, but now I can see, like, well, he was in the first phase, right? He was in the first phase. He couldn't go to the second phase yet. So I really love that assessment.
And here's the interesting thing too, and I don't know, but I'll throw this out here. You may have spent time with him on the skills, right? Like trying to show him what he needs to do when he actually already had those. That was never his problem to begin with. Because if you'd have gone through and done the assessment, you'd be like, okay, he's a 4 in skills, learning skills. He's a 4 in mastery. Don't need to spend any time there. I need to go back here to clarity,
right?
And really get him to understand what are the risks, right?
Right.
Interestingly, the phase that takes the longest for people to get through is clarity. And the mistake that I see people make is, and this is true whether we're talking a one-on-one coaching service or we're talking about a huge corporate client, is they tell people what's coming, and then they jump right into the benefits and learning. So here's what I mean by that. Like, let's imagine from a corporate perspective, I'm going to share with you a corporate example, and then you can tell me how this resonates or whether it doesn't with you in terms of your students. So let's say that I'm rolling out a new ERP system, a new corporate ERP system, and I'm a senior leader, and I say, hey team, really exciting news. In January, we're rolling out a new ERP system. You're going to get training, you're going to get this and that. It's, woohoo, it's a wonderful thing. When I first come into a company, I'll ask them, let's talk about clarity. Does your team understand what's going to change, why we're doing this, and what's at risk if we don't do it? And without fail, senior executives will almost always look at me and say, oh yeah, I told them the new ERP system is coming. I'm like, that's not what I asked you.
Right.
Do they know why you're getting a new ERP system? Do they know what's going to change when that new ERP system comes in? And do they understand the risks if you didn't implement the system? And then I kind of get deer in the headlights. And it's like, we have to go back to that. Telling them that a change is coming, telling them that a change is required is not getting them through clarity. They really have to understand the answers to those questions. And if you haven't spent the time doing that, they can't go any farther. They're stuck. They're stuck at clarity because they don't understand. And the interesting thing is, people have to hear a message at least 5 to 7 times before they can consume it and connects with them. One time doesn't do it. And the bigger the change, the more things that are going on in their minds. Like if I were to say to you, I'm going to make something up. hey, Stephanie, I've got great news. You've got a brand new CEO and a new director that you're going to be reporting to. And we've got a little bit of a shift coming in the job responsibilities that you have. And now I'm going to continue talking about the change. How much of what I just said after that do you think you're actually going to hear?
None. I'm too busy thinking about this new director I'm going to be having. So I'm not listening to you anymore. I'm like, new director,
Exactly.
who's going to be?
So now I'm over here and they say, hey, Carla, is Stephanie and her team, do they understand what's going to happen in the next 3 months? I'll be like, oh yeah, I just had that conversation with them in a team meeting. They all know. When in fact, you didn't hear anything after I said, hey, great news. Here's some change that's coming, right? And your people in your programs are the same way, because we're saying, hey, here's some things I need you to do differently. Like, this is how it's going to be different for you. And right away they're thinking, what about beer nights on Friday? And how am I going to get to the library? And what about this? And what about that? And 5 minutes from now, they have no idea whatever else you said. So they've got to hear that message a minimum of 5 to 7 times before it connects and it consumes. Clarity takes the longest for people to get through. It's almost always the longest phase. Alignment, depending on how badly I want those benefits, can be shorter. Like, you shared with me your one student aligned right away. I understand the benefits. I'm engaged. I made a decision to engage. The other student really never made a decision to engage, right? And so it's kind of like Jill, I wanted her to talk to me. She didn't engage. There was nothing compelling enough for her to engage, right? So we have to find for that student, that employee, that business group, what is it in the alignment phase that's going to be compelling enough that's going to make you decide to engage in this? What is it? And I don't know what it is for the different students. They're a lot of times they're going to have to come up with that on their own, but you may kind of have a little sneak peek into that. It can be, you talk to your dad. I know your dad said he's going to give you $20,000 if you graduate. Like, is that compelling enough for you to engage? For some people, are going to be, hell yeah, I want that $20,000. For others, going to be like, yeah, well, what kind of a job do you want to get when you graduate? How important is it going to be for you to get a good job, a good, education in order to do that job well? Is that something that compels you to want to engage in the program? Like, you're going to have to find that for those people, because they literally cannot move until they've gotten through each one of these stages in order. So I'm going to kind of pause here and say, thoughts on that? Is that helping? Is that kind of opening up questions or thoughts for you?
Yeah, like you said, it will take time for me to digest it, but for me, I love it because it's going to help me help them. Anything that can help me help them is like a win for me. So I've taken all these training, I've taken all these classes. Nobody told me about these 5 steps. And so for me, it's so beneficial because it just makes it a little bit more beneficial for them in the end. Because if I have to focus on clarity for a whole semester, I'm going to do it because I know that will help them eventually, right? Or not. But
totally.
It makes me feel a little bit more secure in how I work with clients. So
the other thing you can do is you can use it just like for your marketing material. I mean, I'll look at it sometimes and think, okay, I'm going to be, so it's, getting paid from the stage. I need to make sure that when I create my marketing material, people understand, what exactly is going to be in the program, and exactly, what change am I going to ask them to make? Well, I'm going to ask them to make a speaker package. I'm going to ask them to do homework every week. I'm going to give them some templates. What's the risk if they don't do it? They could waste tons and tons of time trying to figure this out. I did. I wasted years trying to figure it out. I lost speaking engagements because of it. I lost a $5,000 speaking engagements because I didn't have a speaking reel. Not only did I not have a speaking reel, when the event organizer said, hey, Carla, we were going to hire you, but you don't have a speaking reel, I said, oh no, I totally get that. I'm gonna work on that next week. And then I went to Google, what's a speaking reel? Because I had no freaking clue what I was doing, right? So it's going to save people years of making mistakes, losing engagements, and trying to figure it out on their own. That's clarity, So, it does help you when forming your programs or thinking about how you're going to talk about it. getting crystal clear on exactly what it is, exactly what the risk is. What's the risk of not engaging in getting paid from the stage? You're going to do what I did. And it's going to take you 3 years to get a paid speaking engagement. And you're going to spend tons of time trying to figure it out on your own. Instead, you can go through the 8-week program, build your package, and you're going to be ready to rock in 8 weeks. So, and I think the same thing for you, if you think about your program, right? Well, getting clarity on, well, you can let your student figure it out for themselves. Maybe they'll graduate, maybe they won't. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're going to get frustrated. You're going to get frustrated. It's really hard for a parent to do the coaching. It's helpful to have that third party come in. You can maintain your relationship over here. I mean, I'm making it up on the fly, but walking through the framework also is going to help you help them see what the benefit is to bringing you into doing that work that you're so good at.
And I think just for who I am, right? We all have weaknesses and strengths. I always think that Carla knows what I know, right? That's not true. So if I have to lay it out in clarity, sometimes I have to remind myself. I used to get called into the English department. I used to be an English major at one point, and they're like, Stephanie, you're not in the paper. Like, you never said this, this, and this. I go, well, why would I say that? Like, that's common. Like, you know that. And they're like, but the reader doesn't. Like, because I always assume that you know what I know. And so just the marketing material in terms of clarity, like, you have to literally say it, Stephanie. Not everybody knows that A, B, and C just because you know it. You think everybody knows it. It's common knowledge. It's not. So I really like that clarity part too when you talked about the marketing material.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody knows it and they don't.
It's so easy, and it's our zone of genius. And so we feel like, oh, I'm not going to spell it out because that's going to sound condescending, right?
Yes.
We already know that. And it's like, no, they actually don't. I
don't want to sound like I'm talking down to them.
Yep.
But it's just a piece of information. Like, yeah. So in the marketing, or be clear about what is happening or what's going to happen or the benefit, or what, because I'm not totally clear. I think I feel like I'm just like, even with my website, I'm like, oh, I'm just filling space. Like, they know we're going to work on time management. Well, nope. Why would they know that, right? How would they, and what is the benefit of time management, right? And so I just have to break it down. Just because I know and doesn't mean the world knows the benefit of time management.
Exactly. So I think if you use the assessment, and then I've also got I've written out the 5-step process. I've got some journaling prompts. If you want to use them, they're there. It's going to help you really hone in on your messaging, and it'll help you when you're working with your students to say, I'm going to just do a little quick assessment on where I think they're at. And then I'm going to spend time where I need to spend time in this transformation. And then we'll move on to the next phase. And it'll feel much more natural for the student on the other end, because you're not, let's say, jumping into learning skills when I haven't even really made a decision to engage in this properly.
Right. Yeah. So, I think this is great.
Good. Yeah. I had fun putting it together. Like I said, I've studied change management for a long time, and there's a lot of corporate frameworks that don't get that personal, and that I feel like I couldn't really use as an entrepreneur or a service provider. I mean, you can, but they just didn't feel like they quite fit. And I wanted something that really felt like, yeah, this fits, this feels good to me. And so that's where and I like the kind of that name, right? Calm transformation. Like, I don't want it to be that disruptive change. I want to work with you and lead you through this so that it's something that serves you and not something that I'm just, kind of dumping on top of you. So.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, because when I was reading over the 5 steps, not that your workshops are not always amazing, but I was like, oh, like mindset stuff, I kind of know this stuff, but I'll go and it'll be good. And then now, I did it and I was like, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to look like. So it's really you can tell this is your wheelhouse, because it feels really energetic. It feels more deep than just mindset, right? It's layered. Yeah. So I really enjoyed it. This is probably my favorite workshop so far, I think.
Really? Oh yeah. That makes me so happy.
Because I like that you can do it for personal growth, or you can work with it. It hits a lot of different marks for me. So I'm kind of excited about it.
Yay. Well, thanks for jumping on the call.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm gonna do because we're recording this. I'm gonna say, okay, people, I'm gonna stop the recording here, but Stephanie and I are gonna stay on. So
Yeah.
y'all should jump on with us next time. So we'll say bye, everybody.